We are so excited to have Ilan Frank with us on Source's AI Product Kitchen. Ilan is the Chief Product Officer at Checkr, was the VP of Product at Slack when they launched Slack Connect, and was the Head of Product at Airtable, so has a wealth of experience in building, designing, and scaling AI product organizations. Ilan, we are so excited to have you on AI Product Kitchen.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Matt.
You called AI and product a 30-inning game. How would you describe the innings we're at the moment, and what does the next inning look like for product teams?
Yeah, I think that most teams are probably in inning 2 or 3. So introduction to AI, starting to use it, more probably something like ChatGPT than an actual AI co-pilot for product management. Inning 30 is maybe when you replace the product manager. I don't know that I want to be around at that inning, but we're far away from that right now.
What do you actually think separates product teams that are shipping like it's inning 2 from those that are already shipping like it's inning 10?
I think that what separates them is fear. I think that right now a lot of people are afraid to embrace AI and to really work with it, and that I think is going to be a detriment, obviously. So I encourage my team to really just roll up their sleeves and get as much AI in as possible. Essentially, we have time that we set aside to use AI and to experiment with AI. We have company goals and department goals on using AI. And so we're just trying as much as we can. And that's both internally to be a better product design research team, as well as bringing AI into the product and making the product better for our customers using AI.
You talk us through some of the things that have worked really well and perhaps some of the things that haven't worked so well and some of the learning journey you've been on here.
Yes. Quite a bit. So first of all, over at Checkr, we use AI in the product and have actually for a while. We used the previous version called machine learning, but it was very similar, right? We've used it for a while for what is called charge classification. So that process is basically when you have any type of charge on your record, something that you've committed. It comes with a text string that's inserted usually by the court explaining basically what it is that you've done. That text string is many times a random set of characters. There's some guidelines, but not always followed. A lot of typos, all kinds of things like that. So for someone that is looking at that charge, they need to understand what that is so they can make an assessment of whether to hire or not hire the person. And so we translate that into English using what we call charge classification, which essentially uses machine learning and AI, actually both combined.
Yeah, talk us through this journey with charge classification. So when did you know it was the right time to launch this first AI product? I imagine that was a manual process someone was doing before on the customer side. Talk us through that journey.
So in the industry, in the background check industry, that's still a manual process that just about every single one of our competitors do today. That's still usually you have an army of people that review all of the charges that come back from the courthouses, and they make a determination whether basically this person should be eligible to be hired or not. And they're trained very well on reading all this information, basically. And that recommendation then goes to the customer, essentially. So they get the final recommendation. What we've done is kind of turned it upside down a little bit and said, look, we'll give you a lot more information using AI about these charges, and then you make the decision rather than just get our recommendation. We also have the ability to give a recommendation. But that's the difference in the way we approach that problem. And AI makes it possible. Essentially, because otherwise you do have to train hundreds of very, very specialized people, which takes time and is of course very costly for the customer.
And was this the customer pulling you in this direction, or was it your own internal bet you were making?
In this case, it was a combination of two. The customer never asked for AI. They normally don't, but they asked for a faster background check. That's one of the founding principles of Checkr, is that we can do a background check for more effectively, like better, more accurately, and also faster if we use technology and innovation. So it wasn't that they were asking for AI, but they were asking for a faster background check, and this is a way to basically do that.
How do you think about this from like an internal product perspective? So like if you define like success for faster, for example, so you have your baseline you're looking at, then you have like success metric for what does faster actually mean? And then there's obviously like cost and things like that. Like how
Yes.
do you sort of like weigh up all these different things to figure out, is this a worthwhile bet to go after?
So first of all, as far as speed, it depends on the industry for background checks. Industries, like gig drivers or retail, where people are applying to multiple different jobs and making a decision maybe that day, and where they want to work. You have to get back to them within minutes, an hour maximum. It can't be a day or multiple days. There are other jobs like W-2 workers where we normally have 2-week notices and all that, where the company is okay with a little bit longer turnaround time. So that's the first thing, is that the turnaround time demand changes. But as far as how we look at it, is that we really assess what it means, what value it delivers to the customer. So taking that lens of how important it is, what's the value, and that's how we assess the importance of the features. Basically, there is this going to make a difference in the hiring decision? Is this going to make a difference as far as the quality of the individual that they bring on board? Retail, for example, even e-commerce has surges in demand around Black Friday or around Independence Day, and so we need to bring people quickly on board. It really matters. It's really a lot of value there. So we think about that when we make the assessment.
Awesome. So that first AI product was successful.
Yeah.
Take us through the second AI product. How did you know that one was worth launching? And yeah, what was that journey like?
Yeah, we keep on experimenting, and we're going to keep on releasing more and more AI products. So the second one is what we call Charge Explainer. And so this one is also in the vein of explaining to a person who's adjudicating. Adjudicating is a word for basically making the hiring decision when you have that background check. The adjudicator, what it is that this charge is about. So the first one takes a long string and basically says, okay, this is this. It's bribery, it's abuse, it's whatever it is. Basically, that is this whole long thing means this. Basically, the next one says, okay, well, what does that mean for me in my state? That term, that charge could actually mean different things in different states. It also could mean different things as far as your own policies. And so that second one is really to take the short text or the charge and give a little bit more of an explanation, a couple paragraphs of text of what this means. What are typical sentencing times for this type of misdemeanor or felony and so forth. So that gives a lot more information for the adjudicator. That was the second one. You asked me to take you through it. So it was one of these hack day projects where we were just playing around with AI, and a couple of the engineers came up with this. It was, love at first sight. It was brilliant. It was really informative. It was very different. It's the kind of thing that you want to release right away to your customers. Sometimes when you do that, you go a little too fast. And so we packaged it up and we shipped it. Luckily, we shipped it only to a handful of customers. And the feedback was amazing. People really, really loved it. But there was a concern that maybe we were going to give information to the adjudicator that we're not giving to the candidate. And in background checks, there's actually laws around that. The adjudicator can't really be making decisions off information that the candidate can't see themselves of why you made that decision. And so that concern slowed us down, and we said, okay, hold on a second, we've got to make this right. And we've got to present it to the candidate. You might say, well, that's easy, just turn it on over for the candidate. Well, we'll talk about this later, but with AI, you sometimes get hallucinations, you sometimes get errors. So how do you turn it on for the candidate in a situation where you might be presenting to them something that they're looking at and they're like, wait, that's not what I did. Like that's not accurate at all. And that's not a good feeling, and it's not right to do either, obviously. So we had to slow that one down. We're still polishing that one up.
Yeah. How did this signal come about? Like, how did you realize perhaps it wasn't like there were some things coming out that perhaps you didn't expect? Was that qualitative data? Was it quantitative? Was it a mix of a bunch?
I mean, an angry customer. I mean, that's the answer. It was. I wouldn't say angry. Maybe is a little too harsh, but a customer that brought it up and said like, no, I want this turned off, quickly because I'm concerned about this from a legal perspective. And we're like, you know what, you're right. We try to be, of course, very, very careful from a compliance and legal perspective. But every once in a while, your customers lead the way and show you what you've done right or what you've done wrong.
This brings up a bigger point around building AI products in highly regulated industries. And you mentioned in our conversation before, we just can't get it wrong. And so
Yes.
what does that mean to have guardrails, checks, balances, boundaries in building AI products for real humans?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke about this as far as the hallucinations or the confidence that AI brings. With sometimes it brings information that's not accurate in a highly regulated and compliant world. You can't say, well, we're wrong only 1% of the time. It's okay. You can't do that. Even 1%, is not excusable. So you have to be very, very careful. So some of that, some of the things that we do are, okay as far as you put text on it saying, hey, this is AI generated. It might have errors and things like that. That sometimes is okay, and sometimes, the lawyers will look at that and say that's okay. But sometimes even that's not okay. In which case, what we do is we sometimes introduce human in the loop, actually, which is funny, right? We've added more AI, but now we have to add more humans because of the AI to check the AI to make sure that before we actually release it to the candidate, this thing looks like something that, that passes.
That's super interesting because I've seen a lot of different attacks on this. There's tools that go to replace the human. There's tools that go to augment the human. You said human in the loop is really critical for your specific industry. What does that look like from an experience perspective?
It is funny. Right now, I would say net, because of AI, we at Checkr have hired more people than brought efficiency because we're in a regulated area and because we need to double check the AI before we release it. Now, long term, I'm sure that that's not going to be the case. By the way, I understand that AI will bring drastic efficiency, and that's why we're embracing it so much. But right now, in the short term, to double check and be careful and make sure that we're not making mistakes, we've brought in either full-time or contract resources that really know the law, know criminality, that can really help make sure that we're not making mistakes.
That is fascinating. So what are these people's titles? Do they work with the products team? How do they fit into how you actually build the AI products today?
Yeah, I mean, their job is similar to QA, but operations specialists, they have different title, but essentially their job is to review the recommendations made by AI with the lens of, again, knowing the field, knowing the industry so well. And it's not easy because you need to know, the law in many different areas. You need to be able to research the law in different areas. And then they make an assessment, basically. And that information goes towards our training. So it makes our training models better, but it also prevents us from making mistakes when we ship out an answer or recommendation or something like that to a customer.
So you've had to hire more humans in the short term. That's fascinating. But you think there won't be a need for that in the longer term. What do you think is blocking us today from getting to that future world?
I think so. Mostly the confidence in AI. We need to get to a point where we either have, the answers come with a better confidence score. We haven't found that we can trust the confidence score that's coming from AI too well right now. So either it comes with a better confidence score, so we can say, okay, well, anything above 95%, fine, that we can just ship. Anything 5% or below, we have to review or whatever it is. Or, or we, the answers are just more correct. But I'm not sure when that's going to be. I'm not confident that it's coming, tomorrow.
Fascinating.
So yeah, it'll be a while.
Yeah, if we dig into your broader product vision, so Checkr started as a background tool, you're evolving to much more than that, as you know, and we did a discussion before about all these different possible paths you could go down, but I'd love to hear a bit more about the vision and then ultimately where does AI play into this?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So Checkr, first of all, started out as background checks as an API because there was a demand for very, very fast background checks, but also in a flow of a process like signing up a driver at Uber kind of use case. And so that's how we started. And we optimized our entire system for that, which means going out and collecting and processing data very quickly. So you get a name, social security number, date of birth, and now you have to go and understand where to go to find all this information, put it together in a background check very, very quickly, within 15 minutes. We never had to do anything like storage of that information because by law, if that person gets another background check, another 6 months later, you actually have to rerun that whole process again. So we haven't really spent a whole lot of cycles on storing that information. But there was an aha moment about a year ago where we said, what if we do store all that information? Yes, we can't now we can't process background checks instantly. We have to go and refresh that information to make sure that it's accurate. But that data could make us a lot smarter for background checks to tell us basically maybe where to look, right? Different counties. There's 3,400 counties in the US. Rather than searching brand new every single time, I now know kind of your moving pattern of where you've been. And so I can think a little bit better about where to look. But more importantly, I can now do a lot of things. A background check is an assessment on a person, and it helps a company make a risk assessment at a hiring point. That same data could be used for many, many different decision points where there's a risk assessment made. Financial services, right? A loan is given. Insurance, you want to underwrite someone or something. During any type of fun human-to-human interactions like dating or entering a Uber ride or renting an Airbnb. Anytime where humans might be interacting, you might want to make a risk assessment at that point. And we've got lots and lots of data that we can go and build towards that.
So you're sitting on this wealth of data, and it sounds like there's so many different opportunities you could go into: dating, home loans, various things. How do you figure out which one to actually go after first?
It's classic TAM analysis and thinking about the pain that you're solving for. Those are the ways that I think about product: is how big is this market? How big is the pain? And then of course you look at whether you can build a differentiated product in that market. Can I solve this pain in a differentiated way? And so those are kind of the rough three things that we're looking at, and we've analyzed actually each one of these and rated them, and have looked at a few of these as the first investment areas, basically.
100%. What do you think is some of the most surprising things that you've come across that perhaps you didn't expect about building an AI?
Oh, building an AI. Well, it's challenging, first of all. Using ChatGPT, not so challenging. Building and incorporating AI into the product, lots and lots of challenges. There are things, we started with developer tools and design tools. So Lovable for design, Cursor for our developers. And that's taking off, and they're using it, and they're getting great value. So those types of things are easier. But when you're talking about actually taking AI and putting it in the product to make the product better, that's challenging for the same reason that building any feature is challenging. Because you have to really scope out what is it that you're building, what pain are you solving, why are you building it, when is building too much, how are you going to measure it? All those things you still have to think about. And so it still is a challenge, just like building software. A fun challenge, but still a challenge. So that you think about AI, because all of us have started using ChatGPT and are thinking, oh, this is just magical. It's just like I ask it a question and I get an answer, and it's just magical. It's not. I haven't found it's quite as magical to release features that bring AI to the customer. It's still challenging.
You mentioned one of the surprises you came across was customers asking to expose some of the explanation to the candidate side.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly, again, around compliance. That's really their need there, and because there are laws around background checks. You can't make a decision on information that you have that you don't expose to the candidate. It has to be very clear. So mostly it's around compliance. And so this is where we have to be, very careful with AI and hallucinations and all that. We also want to be, fair to the candidate, and also not create a situation where the candidate is calling us every other second saying, hold on a second, it says this, but this isn't right. Like when they're pushing back on the AI rather than on their actual record. Like that isn't a good use of time for anyone, basically. So we need to be careful with these things. And that's when you ask the question about like, what have I found to be hard? From a hack day project that looked brilliant. It was like, oh my God, this is the most brilliant thing. We have like 2 paragraphs of text explaining exactly what this is. But then you've got the edge cases. And you have to think about those edge cases because, at the end of the day, that's what makes a product, is making sure that all those are, are solved.
When you think about like talent and how you've upskilled internal talent versus brought in external talent, just how do you think about that from a product perspective?
Yeah, you mean as far as building for specifically with AI or just product in general?
Yeah, just like what is required from a skills perspective to actually
to
like
now up level and move into AI world.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're all in the second inning, I think, roughly, or even less. There aren't that many expert product managers in AI out there, so I would not advise my team to say, okay, let's go hire just AI product managers, right now. It is about up leveling the product managers that we have there. We certainly look for and are very open to hiring AI product managers. So checkr.com/careers if you've got that background. But I wouldn't go out and say, let's go and just search for just that.
Is there anything maybe unconventional that you typically look for in a product manager?
From an AI perspective, well, so here's the thing. I think that good product management on the enterprise side is a combination of, curiosity around the problem, and getting to know the customer and the pain, and also a combination of understanding the data, the metrics, the success, criteria of how you're going to solve that. And it used to be that second part, you could either you had product managers who know SQL, or you went to the data science team and you asked for help. But more and more so, that could be answered through AI, right? With tools, like Sauce, with tools, like Pendo that we use, with tools like Databricks. So more and more so, you can go and actually answer these questions, using AI. So now it's really about the imagination. Do you know how to ask the right questions? So the interview starts turning into, how do you approach that problem? What are you asking, rather than, testing their, data querying skills or anything like that.
One thing you mentioned, which I found really interesting, is you said AI has changed a lot of different verticals in a business or functions like sales and engineering. Of course, you guys use Cursor, and you said I think 30% of your code is written by AI now, but not so much product yet. And so what do you think is missing from it changing the game for product, or where have you tried it and perhaps it hasn't quite worked yet?
I think that the role of a product manager has always been to basically, put together all of these different things: the customer feedback, the data, the engineering, the scope, the stories, all these things. And so it's difficult because it's not like I can just have an AI agent be like a mini product manager. Not yet. That's inning 30. We're going to get there. I'm confident we're going to get there. I'll be out of a job soon. But for now, that person that marshals all that information is still needed and difficult to automate with AI. So there's parts of it, right? When you're writing a PRD and you need to do market research, or you need to see quickly what your competitors are doing, those are areas where you can now do that much faster. And that's, again, and we talked a little bit about collecting data or analyzing data. What are the themes of things that my customers want the most? What if I were to build 5 features that would be most impactful, what would those be? Those are all available to you right now, but it's still not enough to say, that's it. Now go do 30-40% of my job, because the truth is that, the decision making on road mapping of like, what are the next, 5 things that we're going to do, that's a very small, but if you measure it by the minutes, that's a very small portion of a product manager's job. It's then going around and making sure that, we're set up to not overcommit, not overdo, not overpromise, not, undership, not all the other things that are involved in actually, getting that product out to market.
Are there any teams out in the market that you see today, or perhaps people that just really inspire you in how you would structure an organization, or where you just really take learnings from?
I mean, I think that funny enough, I think that the AI companies are doing it really well. I think that we can learn from them. And I think one of the things that they're doing is that they're moving really, really quickly. Shipping every single week, coming up with ideas, and perhaps they use AI, better than we do. But coming up with ideas of what's next, every single Monday, and then shipping by Friday, at large scale, right? I've done that before as a 10-person startup, but rarely as a 1,000-person company. And I think that that's going to be the future, is moving that fast, basically. When we can really understand the needs of the market and our customers more quickly, we can also, ship more quickly. So I think that's inspiration, and we're trying to get there.
Yeah, if you could, you had a blank slate, could redesign your organization from day one to be AI native, is there anything specific you would do differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so let's talk about a world where we get to maybe not inning 30, but inning, 18. In that world, what does the product manager look like, right? What is the product manager doing? I think that you're basically thinking a lot more about, the business, a lot more about strategy, a lot more about vision. And even though AI can do that, I think that there's going to be human elements that are going to be very, very important in order to analyze and think and collaborate with go-to-market and all that, and put your company ahead 5 years. Where should you be? And so in that world, then the specifics, the day-to-day, are done a lot more with AI. I think that I would, hire probably, more founders, more, senior group product managers that are able to have that strategic, visionary approach, and then, really work with all those tools to get all the work done, basically, the meetings, the day-to-day, create me the story points and the stories for this, week or this sprint, given, where we're going, write this PRD, given this strategy document that, is where I think the company, the product should go, right? Where we're going to invest in and so forth, what market we're going to unlock. We want to unlock, the European market. Okay, then AI can help with the doing. And so I think that it will tend to be fewer, more senior PMs, basically. What I haven't solved yet is how do you get them? Because in 10 years world, where that's all you need, then how do you get PMs to go from, the lower level, straight out of college, first level PM to that, when, there's a barrier in the middle where, AI is doing all that other work. Here's a feature, go build this feature work.
100%. If we go back to Checkr and specifically your customer, if we look forward, let's say 5 years from now, what would you say is one thing they're doing today that would just feel so obviously archaic?
One thing that our customers are doing I think the manual review, the number of humans that are involved in reviewing a background check is really enormous on average when you look at it for companies, and it just doesn't really it doesn't make sense to use it. No, it's just not an efficient process. So I'm not suggesting in any way that there are no humans that are involved. I think that it's such a serious space. It's such a serious consideration when you have someone's employment on the line that I don't want to say ever, right? I mean 100, 300 years from now. But in my lifetime, I think that we're going to continue to see humans involved in it, but not to the level that it is. I think it could be 80% automated, 20% human. I think that's going to be some of the other things. But I think that there's more clever things that we can do than just basically, codifying a background check and explaining that to a customer. This is a decision in a point in time, and people struggle with decisions a lot of times. And so rather than just give the information on what the person, has done or not done, we could also explain that in context. So here's, a background check, here are different charges. What has my company done? Scan all of my policies, my HR policies, and tell me, what do you recommend based on my HR policies to do in this case? It's not always open and shut, right? It's actually often not. What does the industry do? What are my other competitors? What do they do when faced with this type of challenge? The other thing is, maybe there's a chance to change the hiring policies. So there's some type of policy, but we see a trend that actually looks like, this is your policy, but every time you have to make a decision or your team has to make a decision, they actually go left instead of go right. maybe you want to go back and edit your policy. And we can automatically do that for you. So a dynamic policy that changes a little bit more based on the flow of work. So there's a lot, I think, that we can do in the background check space. And that, I think, goes, by the way, we talked about using this data for decision making. I think that goes for any decision making. I don't think that's just background check space.
How do you describe Checkr's moat and the sustaining advantage over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that at the heart of it, the moat is the data. And you might say, well, hold on. If I've got 2 developers and AI, can't I just go collect this data? And the answer is yes and no. Most of the data that we use is public. For employment purposes, it pretty much is all public. For mortgages or anything like that, it's not entirely public, but accessible. You can go buy credit reports and things like that. The problem is that there's so many different pieces of data, and many of them are accessible through thumb drive still, physical people walking into courthouses and picking up things. Yeah, even here in San Francisco, like the heart of Silicon Valley, you got to go into a courthouse if you want to get, someone's criminal record. And so it's not as easy to build that infrastructure to go and collect that data. Is not very easy.
So it's the data collection and then the actual cleansing of the data, which comes from, you mentioned like 6,000 different sources and integrations that you have.
We have 6,000 different integrations just in the US. So there's more internationally. And that's right. And you have to translate it, the classic ETL. I think the ETL is a differentiator because we've learned all the different nuances in the data. Data is not clean. It's very, very messy. And like I said, when we first pointed AI to it, it was okay, but it wasn't great. And it's still not incredible. So I don't think that, and we've been doing this AI and data for 3 years now. So probably longer than anyone in the background check space. And so it's not easy to just pick up a couple, cursor accounts and say, okay, let's go build background checks. You'll get something, but it's not going to be terribly accurate.
Yeah. Who do you see as the biggest threat from a competitive standpoint? Is it the startup that can move very fast and is AI native? Is it other incumbents? What actually keeps you up at night there?
I think it is the startups. I don't lose sleep over it because, again, with a year in, I thought it was very easy. I was very naive. I came into background checks and thought, how difficult could this be, right? It is actually very, very complicated. And so I'm not as concerned about a startup coming in, but if it's anyone that's going to disrupt Checkr, I would imagine it would be the startups that really know how to move fast with AI.
Fascinating.
I think that's probably true for most industries, but but it's definitely true for us.
Yeah, so you were the VP of product at Slack before, Airtable, then Slack, and of course you launched Slack Connect, which we rely on for all of our business. So thank you for that.
All right.
Very cool. But love to hear about your journey there. And is there any really key learnings that you've taken into how you've actually taken Checkr on the next stage of its journey?
Yeah. Slack Connect was one of the last projects that I had at Slack, and I have to give credit to the team that worked for 2 years before I took that over. But before that, I came in at a time when Slack was just starting to explore going into the enterprise. So the company was about 2 years old, getting a lot of demand from enterprise to have something that has security and administration and compliance and all those things built in. That's my specialty. And I just happened to be lucky enough to meet April Underwood, the CPO at the time, who was looking for a head of enterprise. So I joined in 2016 and really built out enterprise at Slack over 6 years, which was just a really fun journey. The tail end of that was launching Slack Connect.
Very cool. Yeah. Any key learnings on how you go from a really strong SMB tech-focused motion to the enterprise? And that must have been a crazy journey for you.
Yeah, funny enough, the one key learning I think that is maybe surprising is don't do it too soon. I joined, like I said, when Slack was 2 years old. I laugh that, if I joined too early, when Slack originated, maybe, none of the success would have happened because you can focus on enterprise too early. There is such a thing. I think that one of the things that helped Slack a lot is that we focused and built a product that people loved first. And then we focused on, okay, how do we expand it into the enterprise? Because when you go into the enterprise, there's a land and expand motion. There is a user and chooser, and they have different needs. And you start thinking now about building different things, but those conflict one another. If you build too many, tools for the chooser, especially in productivity software, then your users are going to reject it, and that's not going to allow you to expand. And so you have to think about the right timing to do that, basically. So it's funny. Everyone, there's a lot of companies that call and ask, "Hey, how'd you do it? We're 2 months old. We want to start building for the enterprise." And a lot of times I'll say, just hold on, wait. I think sometimes that's the better lesson from the lesson in Slack.
So there's the product is one ingredient. There's knowing how to navigate the user and chooser. I like that framing rather than like buyer and user. And then any other ingredients that you see is really important before you would layer on like a really successful enterprise motion.
For enterprise, I think the main ingredient there, besides the product side, which we talked about, and the different sets of needs, security, administration, compliance, scale, I think of those four. Essentially, when I think of how to break down enterprise needs, but we can talk separately about product. The other thing I think that you need to think about is go-to-market. And that involves everything from pricing and packaging. Don't get it wrong. You get it wrong, it's hard to undo. You can make it cheaper. Hard to change your pricing completely year or two and all of a sudden ask for a lot more money. So you have to think about the packaging and the quick advice in a nutshell that I recommend is tying pricing and packaging as much as possible to the pain that you're solving.
Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, sure. So there's things, features that involve, any type of spread or anything like that is not really solving a pain for the customer, it's solving a pain for you. Give those away for free. Anything that's around there, don't block anything that I think is maybe more obvious. But there are things that, for example, administration features. Let's talk about specific enterprise features. Administration features. That is all about deployment and the ease of deployment and the ease of measuring the ROI of your software to that company. That's also important, a little bit more to you than them. So don't charge for administration. A lot of people put that in like the enterprise version. Like that's the only time you can get like these. That's important to you, not them. So why do that to yourself? That doesn't make any sense. While a lot of times people, give away functionality that is very, very valuable, like integrations. Integrations are extremely valuable for enterprise and getting data in and the ability to really mash a bunch of data in. And so if you give all that away for free, then it's very difficult to come back and say, hold on, you're getting a lot more value from our tool. We would like to be compensated for that. Well, you've already given all the integrations away. So, that doesn't work. So think about what are the value drivers? And I think it's a fair thing to do. I think customers then, see value and then they're willing to, to pay for that value. But sorry, we were on the track of what else to think about. In go-to-market, it's also your go-to-market motion. And there what I think about is ICP, right? Which is what industries are you going to unlock? And there's 26, depending on how you look at it, roughly industries. Think about the ones that are going to be the easiest to unlock for you. It totally depends on what software, legal software, accounting software we talked about earlier, productivity software. So what software is it? What does it unlock? What are the industries that I can get into where I'm not going to have any difficult to build, I should say. I don't mean to say crazy. Requirements like, hosting in Germany or something like that. That's not what you want to build your second month out. But SSO is pretty easy to build. You can even partner with a company like WorkOS to do SSO and SCIM pretty quickly. So those are places that I would start. What industries are unlocked with that? High tech, media is usually a good industry to start in. Commercial banking. So there are places that you can start that make a lot of sense basically, and you think about the requirements that are needed there, And you think about that from a go-to-market perspective, your sellers are pointing there, your product is thinking about that, from a support perspective and deployment. So everyone is together thinking, okay, we're going to unlock industry by industry. How are we going to do it, right?
So you were at Airtable when AI first came out, and in particular ChatGPT, and you started to think about how do we actually incorporate this into our products? Can you talk us through the journey there?
Yeah, so we saw ChatGPT, and of course, everyone's minds were blown. And some were very concerned about it or afraid of what it's going to do to the world. And some were very, let's go, let's do this right away. I give Howie Liu, the CEO there, tons of credit that he was a believer from day one and set up an AI team to go and explore AI and build AI into the product right away, which was fantastic. What we had to decide as a product team at the time I was leading product there is, are we going to take AI and put it inside Airtable? Airtable is a tool to create these micro apps or apps inside the workplace. And so do we give AI as a tool for these Airtable app developers so that they can incorporate AI into their tool? Think about, I have basically an Airtable that tracks, basically all of my marketing campaigns. And so I want an AI field next to it that analyzes and makes recommendations based on the marketing campaign or something like that, right? Or do we use AI to make the builders' lives easier and allow them to build these apps more easily? And the natural reaction might be, well, both, you need to do both. But at that point, we were experimenting, and it was like, we can put together 4 or 5 engineers, just to see what they can get out. And so we decided to give the tool to our developers. We had hundreds of thousands of developers building, or builders, we call them, building inside Airtable. So we decided, let's give them this tool. It's so much more powerful than just allowing people to build apps. But what we found was that when we released it, it was a little bit, crickets, because people were like, what do I do with this now? It was still the early days, it was still the learning curve of AI. And so Airtable then went on and started building now let's build an app using Airtable. Put in your prompt, and we will very, very quickly build that app using Airtable. So think of, Cursor for developers, but that specifically for Airtable. And I'm obviously no longer at Airtable, from what I understand. It's been a great success. And so I think that is a challenge that a lot of product teams have, which is, how do we use AI? I think that if you think of it, if you think of it as a thing, that's wrong. I think, again, what is the pain? What are the pains that you can solve? If the pain is, building apps, that's really hard to do, that's where you want to deploy it. If the pain is the apps aren't powerful enough, they need to do more, that's where you want to deploy it. I think focusing really on the pain is the right way to think about it and frame AI, rather than, this is so powerful, let's give it to the masses. The more people, the better.
Bringing it back to the customer problem is a great one. Is there any other advice or tips you would give to other product leaders who are just trying to figure out how do we incorporate AI or really supercharge our users with it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The first thing is just do it. I think a lot of product managers and teams are frozen. It's the typical analysis paralysis of road mapping and planning and all that we product managers love to do. In this case, again, going back to Airtable, Howie, huge believer, set up a team and said, we're just going to do this. We're just going to have 4 engineers, 5 engineers, whatever it was, go and build. And it was inspirational for the whole company. Everyone was seeing everything that they were doing, and they were moving very fast. And that's, I think, the right way to do it. So that's the first thing. You have to obviously focus on the problem, which we just talked about. But I think the last thing is, which is true for all product management, but how do we circle back and how do we iterate? When do we know to turn and do something different? Because just going down the AI route and saying, well, we're doing AI, so therefore we must be going in the right direction is, I think some area where I've seen companies make mistakes and overinvest in certain areas. It's not pull away from AI, but pull away from AI in this area.
At the start of our conversation, you mentioned your team was using a number of different AI tools to actually supercharge themselves and how they actually build products.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through what they're actually using today and what's working?
Yeah, so the design team, the first team that's in my world of design, user research, product, we also have supply chain that reports into me, but it was the design team. They jumped very quickly on Lovable as a tool for prototyping. And it actually solved a very specific pain that we had where it was taking us a long time to basically design, get feedback, redesign, and all of that. And so we were actually, when we were looking at our life cycle, our software development life cycle, we saw that that was an area that really needed improvement, and that tool solved this pain, and the team, not to make a joke, but loves it. And so they jumped right on it. Yeah, that was the first area. Product managers then very quickly, started using it. We use some of the Zoom and some of the Gong built-in tools to analyze calls with customers. We use Pendo and some of the features there. We use obviously Gemini and all kinds of other tools to write PRDs, analyze markets, competitors, and all of that. So on the product management, we use it, and research does the same thing basically, as far as grokking information and synthesizing and making recommendations. So we've started using it really throughout all of the product organization at this point.
Any areas that you are more bullish on that perhaps you haven't seen as much innovation in?
I think that understanding the pain, understanding the problem, that's still difficult because a lot of that involves getting on a plane and actually physically meeting with a customer. It's not like it's available on the internet and an AI tool can go and get it. There's obviously, AI tools that are doing a great job as far as taking product gap information, customer feedback, combing through, Zendesk or tickets and presenting that information. I love those. But what about the unseen pain? What about the stuff that you learn about when you're sitting there, not even at a customer site at the conference room, but actually at dinner, when you really get the real pain and what's happening. And then you can really read, what is it going to mean to the customer if you solve that problem? And that's difficult to do right now with AI, until we get AI humanoids that get on airplanes and travel. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I used to build products for safety managers and people on non-information spaces like construction sites, manufacturing, and there were some insights you could only really learn when you actually figured out, oh, well, the reception's no good here, or there is no reception at all. How do we start to how can I report incidents, for example, in environments like that?
That's right. Yeah, I'm recommending to my kids to be plumbers instead of engineers. I think that that's going to be a safe area to invest in the next 20 years.
Are there any product beliefs that you have that others may disagree with you on?
Well, so, I think that some people would, funny enough, after our entire conversation, some people would still consider me an AI skeptic. Because, not because I haven't embraced AI, but because when I look at the AI problem, I say, okay, hold on a second. What pain are we solving and all that. That mentality of not diving head in without looking, I think some people look at as an AI skeptic. I don't look at it that way, but anyway, that I think is I think the where I think product managers are falling right now is I don't think I haven't met, at least in the last, maybe it's my purview, in the last year I haven't met a product manager that's doesn't believe in AI. It's well, AI is not a thing. Everyone is there now. Maybe 3 years ago, maybe that was oh, this is all smoke and mirrors, but that's not the case anymore. So now the question is basically how do you deploy it? Where do you deploy it and all that? And I still take I want to make sure I solve a real problem viewpoint rather than, I want to use AI for AI's sake. So maybe that makes me a weird character in the product management lens. I'm not sure.
When you look forward over the next 12 months, what are you most excited about at Checkr?
So over the next 12 months, we're really setting up to transition, like I mentioned, from looking at this data as a way to build background checks to actually creating this data lake that's almost like a data graph of all people that connect to one another, that connect to jobs, that connect to education, everything, basically. Think about the world of people and graph that essentially. And that will allow us to make these really, really informed decisions. And so that is something that we're looking at right now, or starting to build right now, and that'll be built over the next 12 months. And so I'm very, very excited about it. I think this is a very unique challenge. I'm glad that we have AI and ML to make it easier for us to build it and to make it more powerful. And I think the outcomes are just going to be tremendous as far as what we can do with it. And so we're focused on that, and it's something that gets me excited every single Monday morning when I get in. What are we building? What are we doing?
That's so exciting. Thank you so much for coming on, Ilan.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.